Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into episode 3 of the Fantasy Facts podcast. I'm here with my co-host David, as always. How's it going, David?
It's going well, thugging along.
I'm surprised you said that. We both just watched the U.S. get absolutely creamed.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that one.
Yeah, I've chosen to wear black in honor of the funeral we just witnessed. Rough game for those of you following the World Cup, the other football. Um, Tough looks for the U.S. as they bow out to Belgium tonight. So David and I are in a little bit of a somber mood, sports-wise, but we're gonna reamp the energy. We're gonna bring it back, and we're gonna talk American football, NFL, and the fantasy game that we all love. Um, on today's episode, we're continuing our divisional breakdowns that we've started over the course of the summer. So in the previous 2 episodes, we broke down the AFC East and the AFC North. So if you're looking for information on those teams going into fantasy draft season about what changed, roster changes, coaching changes, scheme changes, what that means for the fantasy players, that is over on episodes 1 and 2. On episode 3 today, we're going to be continuing that divisional coverage, talking about the AFC South. So we are talking Jaguars, Texans, Colts, and Titans. Before we jump in, just a reminder, all of these podcasts are uploaded to Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can find us on those platforms as the Fantasy Facts Podcast. We are over on X at The Fantasy Facts, TikTok, fantasy.facts, Instagram, fantasy.facts, and as always, facts is spelled F-A-X. Should we talk some AFC South, David? David's nodding his head yes, so we're going to jump in. Just a reminder for everybody, last year's standings, the Tennessee Titans had a dismal season, finished 4th in the division with a record of 3-14. The Colts finished 3rd. They were 8-9, dealt with a lot of injuries, but still managed to get to nearly 500. The Houston Texans were 12-5. They finished 2nd. They were a AFC wildcard team. They won in the wildcard round against the Pittsburgh Steelers and then lost in the divisional round to the New England Patriots. The Jacksonville Jaguars went 13-4. They were AFC South champions. However, they did lose in the wildcard round to Buffalo, so the Texans actually made it a little bit further, even though they didn't win the division in the playoffs. Lots of fun players in this division. Lots of turnover in some key positions for a couple teams. Titans had a lot of draft picks and things like that, so it's going to be a fun division to talk about. David, sticking with what we've been doing, going bottom to top.
Yeah, save the best for last.
Save the best for last. We'll see. Maybe the Jags won't be the best this year. We'll find out.
They will be.
You're supposed to save your divisional predictions for the end of the show, you know? You're kind of ruining the whole point of the show.
Just letting everybody know. It'll be the Jags.
Spoiler alert, you're wrong. But anyways, Tennessee Titans. Big changes in Tennessee. Whole coaching staff gone. Robert Saleh was hired as head coach. His second stint, I believe, as a head coach. He was head coach of the Jets for a brief period. Brian Dable came over from the Giants after being fired as the head coach over there. He's the new offensive coordinator. And Gus Bradley, another well-known name around the NFL, been in the NFL for a long time, is taking over at defensive coordinator. I think the coaching staff will be interesting to talk about with this team, so let's come back to that for sure. As far as the outgoing fantasy contributors, the Titans didn't really have many fantasy contributors last year, to be honest. The biggest name that left was tight end Chig Okonkwo. I bet a lot of you are going to go, I didn't know that Chig Okonkwo played for the Titans or was a person. That's about the level that Chig Okonkwo was at. We know who he is, obviously, in the fantasy realm. He has briefly flared up, and people have uh, played him occasionally here and there. But
AKA you in the playoffs in our Dynasty League 2 years ago.
and who won the championship?
No, I was saying you were playing me the week that you started him.
Yeah, Chigo Conquo had one of his flare up periods right around the fantasy playoffs a couple years ago, 2 seasons ago. And so Chigo Conquo I would call him a fantasy contributor. Let's leave it at that. A lot more incomings for the Titans. They went and got a lot of help on offense. Some names I think are a big deal. Some names I don't. Michael Carter was signed at the running back position. Don't find that super, super impactful. Wan'Dale Robinson came over. He was a wide receiver with the Giants. He followed Brian Dable over from the Giants. Same with tight end Daniel Bellinger from the Giants. He followed Brian Dable over, so Dable brought a few people that he's familiar with. And then I would say the big one that David and I are definitely going to talk about on this podcast, first round pick. I don't remember which pick he was off the top of my head. Fourth, I want to say. Overall pick in the entire draft. They went out and got Carnell Tate, wide receiver out of Ohio State. For those of you that follow college ball, you know that when you take a wide receiver out of Ohio State, it generally works out pretty good. Some pretty dismal numbers for the Titans last year. If you dig into the stats as well, they were 26th in plays per game. Their pass rate over expectation was negative 3.9%. Their EPA per play was 30th in the NFL, so their plays were not valuable whatsoever. Their run percentage was 37.65%, which was 30th in the NFL. That's a product of them being awful and losing every game. I don't think they ideally wanted to throw that much with a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. And they were also 30th in points per game, averaging just under 17 points a game. So really not a lot of scoring to go around there. I want to start with Carnell Tate just because he's such a fun and exciting player, and he's going to mean a lot to Cam Ward, I think. But then I actually want to jump over to the coaching staff and talk about that a little bit, David. But if you got anything besides those two things you want to cover, go ahead before we discuss Carnell Tate.
I think I'll just jump right into Carnell Tate. Obviously last year Cam Ward didn't have offensive weapons. I mean, he had Chig, like we talked about, and then he was working with Chimere DK and Lee K.O. Manor,
Calvin Ridley's the
Ridley, I
biggest name.
suppose. But anyways, wasn't Calvin Ridley like banged up quite a bit last year or something? I don't know what was going on.
Calvin Ridley had an injury last year, and I believe he missed like a good chunk of games in the middle of the season, and then came back for like the last few weeks of the season.
I just remember DK was actually like a little bit fantasy relevant a couple weeks. He was catching touchdowns or something.
And Chimere DK was a rookie, right? So we always got to keep on our eyes on rookies that look decent their first season, because there is, those year 2, year 3 jumps that occasionally come from unexpected rookies, but that doesn't mean they don't come.
But yeah, anyways, what I was getting at was Carnell Tate is much better than anybody in that room, and so I expect him to have kind of a Tedero McMillan type season, if not slightly better, because I think Cam Ward will have a better year.
He just popped into my head. I was like, I feel like he's going to be Tet, like number one target on a bad offense.
Yeah, and I think Cam Ward is probably a little bit more solid than Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young. I'm not the biggest fan on Cam Ward, but also I think he's a better passer than Bryce Young is and more accurate. So I think he'll probably have a few more quality targets. Sometimes watching Tet was pretty frustrating as a fantasy manager because you'd see him wide open and Bryce Young couldn't hit him, or it was just frustrating. I mean, like I said, Bryce Young, awesome guy. Wish nothing but the best for him, but for fantasy purposes, it was sometimes a struggle. So I think he's going to have a pretty similar season to Tet as far as kind of finishing that, Tet finished like wide receiver 14 type range, something like that. And like we've talked about past seasons or over the past, but Tet did play I think, every game. And so that also inflated his value a little bit because his points per game was only something like 10 to 12. And that put him at wide receiver 14. But in points per game, I think he would have been more like the wide receiver 20 or something.
Yeah, Ted, what's the fable or whatever, tortoise in the hare, right? Like, Ted tortoised himself to a top 15 finish. He was just persistent and played every game and was kind of relevant in all of them, and it ended up to adding up to some points at the end. Um, I will say this about Carnell Tate. I think he's a much better player than Tet, just on raw ability. I've never been like crazy high on Tet. I think Ted is a decent NFL receiver, but I think he was the best receiver in a bad draft class. I think Tate is the best receiver in this draft class, and I think the draft class in terms of wide receiver is significantly better. Um, so I'm very high on Carnell Tate just as a player, just on the film, just on who he is and his talent, regardless of the situation that he finds himself in, anything like that. If you're comparing Tet and Carnell Tate on that, I think Carnell Tate's a significantly better player. I like him a lot more. Um, I don't think Carnell Tate's coming into a great situation either, which is similar to Tet, right? Like, I think it's going to be a slow, ineffective offense a lot of the time, and that's what happens when you have a young quarterback who's learning on the job. However, I do think that Cam Ward will improve this year, um, and I do think that there will be enough fantasy value there that if you can get Tate, later in drafts, those are the type of rookies that you want to take shots on versus a wide receiver 2 on, you know, a decent team, but not a great team that we know what they are. They finish as a wide receiver 3 every single year type of a guy.
Yeah, I mean, just for example, last year in our main redraft league, I took Tet in, I don't know what round it was, but later, and I think I started in week 1 because he was my wide receiver 2 to flex type player. I think he was my wide receiver 3 because I had Mike Evans, who that didn't go so hot, but he could not stay on the field. Hopefully a little better for him this year on the Niners, but yeah.
Nah, dude, he's
So,
going to San Francisco. He's going by that electric substation or whatever, dude.
oh geez, yeah, no kidding. But yeah, no, I think Tet was a good value where he's at, and if you can get kind of Carnell Tate in that same range, I would say it's going to be a good value for you. Unlike Drew, I was pretty high on Tet McMillan last year. In our rankings, I had him at number 1 in the class, and I think Drew was it Travis Hunter ahead of him? No. Who was? Oh, Ibuka,
Would have to
I
go,
think.
yeah, I want to say it was Ikbuka. And to be honest, I don't feel like that was necessarily a bad call. But again, in general, you can go, I guess our old, sorry, I muted my mic, but I think our old videos are down now. But when we talked through those rookies, I, from the beginning, was like, this is just not a wide receiver draft class I'm in love with. And um, that's just the way it is, right? Like, I just don't think that any of the wide receivers in that draft class are going to end up as like that superstar Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, um, Puka, JSN type stratosphere. Carnell Tate has the ability to reach there. I'm not saying he's going to, but he can. I think David's looking up something about our old rankings to see if he can find it.
Yeah, I was just curious to go back and look. I was taking a peek, but since you stopped talking, I kind of got left out to dry. Um, but yeah, no, I
My
think
bad, brother.
regardless, I'm higher on Tet than Drew was. I think I might have actually talked Drew into Tet a little bit more than he was to begin with last year, but
You did, right? And it was exactly what you said is exactly what happened, right? Like you said, their volume's going to be there. He's clearly the best wide receiver on the Panthers, and they don't have any good wide receivers. So I just don't understand how he's not going to be fantasy relevant. And on that outlook, I think you were correct. But when I watched him with my eyes last year, I also saw what I saw in evaluating him as a draft prospect, which is I don't see the ability that will jump him up into that stratosphere with those other big wide receivers. I think as long as he's the number 1 target on the Panthers, he's going to be a fantasy relevant player because number 1 targets on an offense, when you're that big and you're getting that many targets, you're going to be valuable for fantasy. Tate, on the other hand, like I could see how he reaches that level, and that's why I'm so excited about him because they're pairing him with a young quarterback. And if they ascend at the same time, right, we're heading for a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think Carnell Tate is an overall better prospect, but I do think Tet is better than you're giving him credit for. I think watching his film alone, he looked pretty solid last year. I think
Yeah.
his
I
production.
don't mean
Yeah, I
to
mean, let's hop
I
into
don't
that
mean to
maybe
cut you
probably
off,
when
but
we're talking about the Panthers.
we're
But
talking about the Panthers way more than we're talking about the Titans. So let's stick to Carnell Tate and what you think of him as a prospect, David. You kind of compared the season you think he's going to have to Tet, but talk me through like what you see in Carnell Tate as a player and what you like about him, what you don't like about him, and why you think he's a better prospect than Tet.
yeah, I think his ceiling clearly is higher. I think there's more room for him to be worse or better than Tet was his rookie year as well. I think Tet kind of had that solid floor, but for some reason, something about that gives me he's either going to have a pretty solid year or he might struggle a little bit. But even if he does have a slow year his first year, I don't think that means he's going to be bad in the NFL. I mean, you look at other Ohio State receivers like, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He had a slow start to his career, but he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So I think that if something like
I
that
mean,
were to happen,
the Ohio State wide receiver list goes on and on and on, right?
yeah, and your only little
Egbuka,
mark
Garrett
is Marvin
Wilson,
Harrison, who has
Marvin
struggled,
Harrison. Marvin
but
Harrison has struggled. That's
he's
a
still had
fair,
ups as well.
yeah.
He's still a solid receiver.
That's a fair example of one that didn't work out. But just look at the number that don't work out and the number that do, right? Like it's wide receiver U for a reason.
Yeah, but I mean, for some reason, I don't think I see Carnell Tate being an elite receiver in the NFL. I don't see him being a Justin Jefferson, or like a Jamar Chase type receiver. I think I see him more as like a T. Higgins level receiver, like a very solid NFL receiver that's not necessarily that top level.
Yeah, I think if I was projecting him out, that's where I'd project him. But I can see how he could reach it higher than that. You know what I mean? Whereas I didn't see that with Tet. That was the only point I was trying to make. But if I was projecting out Carnell Tate, yeah, I don't think he's gonna. I mean, very few guys reach that stratosphere, right? It's thin air up there. Um, but yeah, I think the general sentiment from David and I is we're excited to see how this works out because we think Carnell Tate has some real ability, and we want to see how Cam Ward can do with an actual weapon as well.
yeah, and then I mean, probably have you hop into talking about the coaching then.
Any of these other incoming guys want to talk about them in any way? Daniel Bellinger kind of piques my interest just a tiny bit because there's pretty big hole at tight end with Chigo Okonkwo leaving, and Brian Dable's got some familiarity with him. So I would just say keep Daniel Bellinger like on the radar. He's not somebody I'm like targeting in drafts, but for those of you who like stream tight ends, he could be one of those guys after a week or two you're picking up because he's getting 6-7 targets over the middle of the field and he catches a touchdown every 2 or 3 weeks type of a guy. I do think that the Titans drafted a tight end last year as well out of Texas. I can't remember his name. Gunnar Helm, I want to say his name is. And he did play a little bit as well last year with Chig, and he had some flashes as well. So Bellinger, Helm, I would watch it, right? Because I think somebody's going to be an important piece on this offense as well, if the offense is good enough to support enough pieces. Any thoughts on Daniel Bellinger, David?
Yeah, I think kind of just what you said. I don't expect him to be great, but he's like kind of someone to keep your eye on like that. Could have some touchdown upside or just kind of fill that Chig role. But like we said, I think that Chig role will be worse than it was without having a good receiver. So even if he is the Chig role, it's going to be worse than the Chig role was last year.
Yeah, but you're banking on the offense as a whole to get better. So you're hoping that there's a good tight end and a good wide receiver. You know what I mean? What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. We should jump into the coaching staff. So I'm going to let you go first, David, but give me kind of your your opinion on the hire at head coach, but also if you have any thoughts on those coordinator positions. I'm interested to hear what you think before I talk about it.
Yeah, I think Brian Dable's an interesting hire. Personally, I think he may have got a little bit of the short end of the stick when he was at the Giants. I don't think he's necessarily the world's worst coach. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what he does with the Titans. Honestly, I don't have a lot of expectations. It feels kind of like the Titans have been in that little realm ever since they were the 1 seed in the AFC where they haven't been able to do a lot. So maybe he's going to be able to be the guy that kind of brings them out of that, but I don't necessarily see that. The way I do see it is if he's able to kind of develop Cam Ward into more of an upper echelon quarterback, and if he's able to do that, then we're going to be able to see the stride for the team. I think a lot of it's really going to depend on that quarterback play and how well he meshes in the new offense with both that and the new coordinators. And if they're able to kind of mesh and fit well
So
together,
so
there
Dable
is more
Dable
upside.
is Dable is one of the coordinators, just to be clear. He's the offensive coordinator.
Oh,
Robert
okay, okay.
Saleh is the head coach.
Oh, shoot, that's my bad. Yeah. So if he's able to connect with or oh my goodness, if he's able to connect with Cam Ward and kind of bring him into his offensive scheme and get him dialed in with that and bring him into the player that we kind of saw in college and just bring that raw ability out, I do think that he has the upside to kind of peak this season. As far as head coach, then I'm not,
Yeah,
don't think
what's
it's
your
the
what's your
greatest
opinion
hire.
on Robert Saleh? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't know why I was thinking they had hired Brian Dable as the head coach. I was thinking it was backwards, kind of.
I think Brian Dable's getting a lot of headlines because he's the one who's there to mentor Cam Ward, right? So it's like what everybody's paying attention to in Tennessee. Um, to be honest, I don't mind the Robert Saleh hire. Like, I think that right, like he was the head coach of the Jets. It didn't go well. There's a line down the block and around the corner of coaches that was the case with them. Um, so I don't necessarily mind the Robert Saleh hire. I don't love it either. I think it's pretty average. I think the Titans kind of had to settle for that, right? It's not like they were one of the most coveted jobs out there, especially with the Steelers opening up, the Ravens opening up, right? Some big jobs opened up this cycle. Even the Giants with the intrigue of Jackson Dart and all that stuff too, right? Like there was a lot of big jobs that opened up. And obviously the Titans were getting um, kind of outbid probably by a lot of those bigger job openings that, prospective head coaches had interest in. But what I have to give Robert Saleh credit for is I love what he did with the coordinators. He brought in experienced NFL coordinators. He's not got a clown car of guys that have never done this before. Brian Dable's been a great offensive mind in the NFL for a long time. Gus Bradley's been a defensive guy in the NFL for a long time. So he's surrounding himself with people that know what they're doing and have been doing this for a long time. So I have to give Robert Saleh credit on that. I think that when you're trying to establish with a young, inexperienced quarterback and team, when you're trying to build that foundation, it's really important that you have coaches around that have been around the block. They know what it's like and they can help establish that kind of team identity. Um, I love the Brian Dable hire. I think that Brian Dable has been like a scapegoat. I feel like he's been a scapegoat in the NFL for like 7 years at this point. Like he's the one who nurtured what we have in Josh Allen into existence, right? Because everybody's like, oh, Josh Allen's great, right? But a lot of people forget that when Josh Allen first came into the league, he was raw and undeveloped in his ability. And the first season, maybe even 2 seasons, I'd have to go back and look, but it did not go well for Josh Allen, right? Like lots of turnovers, lots of mistakes. You could see the ability, but the consistency wasn't there. And Brian Dable kind of helped shape that offense around Josh Allen, and Josh Allen exploded, right? And then the Bills failed in the playoffs to a dynasty quite a few times, and he was the scapegoat, right? Like, bye bye Brian Dable, but Sean McDermott's keeping his job, right? And then he went to the New York Giants, and He drafted Jackson Dart, who looks like Jackson Dart's probably going to be a decent NFL quarterback. He did these things in New York, and it's like, nope, not working. See you later, right? And so I feel like Brian Dable is just always like that fall guy when he's just starting to turn things around. And we see what happened with Buffalo. Sean McDermott eventually lost his job because Buffalo still blew it in the playoffs, even when it wasn't Dable, right? So I'm just excited to see how Brian Dable develops Cam Ward and transforms this offense to go around him. That's what I'm really excited about with this team. They're one of the teams that you didn't want to turn on their football games last year because it was so atrocious to watch, that this year I'm really excited about. I want to see and absorb as much Titans football as I can to see what we're working with these young quarterback, young wide receiver, new coaching staff. So I'm pretty excited about this team just to learn and watch what they got. Anything to add about the Titans, David, before we jump into the Indianapolis Colts?
No, just I think I would agree. I think the Titans will be a lot more entertaining to watch. And if not entertaining, intriguing, like Drew said, just to kind of see all those question marks and that young core kind of take flight. I'm interested to see too if Tyjae Spears could actually stay healthy for a full season and get a little bit more of a workload. I feel like he's starting to get past his opportunity.
Yeah, I'm done with the running back room here. Like Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears. Now they've signed Michael Carter. Like, I don't think you're going to find a lot of value in that backfield. I'm interested in the pass catchers.
Yeah, especially an offense that ran the ball 30% of the time last year, or they want that.
And even if they improve, are likely going to be losing more games than they're winning this year, right? Yeah. 100%. Okay. Stay tuned for the division predictions because I think David and I might surprise people with the Titans a little bit. That's what you call a cliffhanger, David, instead of just saying, I picked the Jaguars to finish first.
Because the Jaguars will finish first.
Fair enough. Indianapolis Colts. I think after the Bengals, maybe this was the most surprising team that didn't change any coaching staff. I think a lot of people were questioning the Shane Steichen. Would he still be around? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was kind of the vibe around the end of the season.
They just need to put in Anthony Richardson and they'd win games. I don't know what else to tell you.
That's definitely not the answer. In terms
of my dynasty team a couple years ago, he's pretty good at running the ball.
Yeah. In terms of kind of off-season moves outside of coaching staff, since there was no changes, the biggest outgoing is definitely Michael Pittman Jr. We talked about him on the AFC North podcast as he was traded over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The reason Michael Pittman was traded was that they chose to re-sign and retain Alec Pierce. So Alec Pierce got paid this offseason. I think probably a lot more than a lot of casual NFL fans realize. So I guess congrats to Alex Pierce.
What are we doing? I mean, what are they doing? Like you said, congrats to Alec Pierce, but he can't. What are we going out there with him being wide receiver 1? Like, what are we doing?
One of my unpopular opinions about the NFL, I think that most people wouldn't agree with, is I think the Colts are one of the poorest run organizations in the NFL.
I mean, it's like baffles me that they let Pittman walk, like got Pittman out of there trade, and then they just signed Alec Pierce to an extension for way too much money. He's like the most one-dimensional receiver in the NFL. All he does is catch deep balls like twice a game.
Wow, some Alec Pierce slander.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just what are we like? Right, it's there. Terrible. I don't care if you have like one of the best tight ends in the NFL. You still need a competent receiver. Especially with the quarterback coming off an Achilles tear.
I think that's Josh Downs.
Regardless,
I think Josh Downs is the best wide receiver in that room.
He probably is, but he's not getting. I mean, they're paying Alec Pierce like he's their one. Is my point.
And they got rid of Michael Pittman, who, to be honest, I don't think was playing like a number 1 either. To be fair,
but I think he's a more solid receiver than Alec Pierce.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about Pittman as a Steelers fan, but it's because he's a wide receiver 2 next to DK Metcalf, right? And that's where I think his role in the NFL is. The Colts don't have great wide receivers, and it feels like they're desperately trying to every time a guy has a good season, it's like, okay, we finally got him, right? They did the same with Michael Pittman. It was like he had a good season, the pity city years, and it was like, oh,
Yeah, but
got
at
to
least
pay
with
him.
him, you could see like he's a well-rounded receiver that can go get 10 catches a game. I don't know if Alec Pierce has had 10 catches in a game in his career.
Well, that's not Alec Pierce's game, but that doesn't mean that Alec Pierce isn't a more impactful player.
Apparently, I just really
I
don't like
mean,
Alec Pierce.
I'm not saying that I think Alec Pierce is a more impactful player. I'm just saying just because he catches less passes doesn't mean he's a less impactful player. Um, but anyways, congrats to Alec Pierce, I guess. Um, then the other big offseason move they decided to make is they retained and re-signed Daniel Jones. I don't really think they had a choice. He, um,
Anthony Richardson.
enough with Anthony Richardson, man. But yeah, they brought back Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones will be the starting quarterback for the Colts this year. He's coming off an Achilles tear, so that's going to be a big factor. For the most part, I can't think of a ton of examples where the first year off of an Achilles tear went well. It didn't go well for Aaron Rodgers. It didn't go well for Kirk Cousins. Those are the two I could think of really quickly. I'm sure there's been others, but um, yeah, I guess my question with the Colts is again this like, what is the direction we're heading, right? It felt like it might have been the perfect time to kind of strip it down and start over, right? Your quarterback who you'd signed but didn't invest a lot in because he was on a 1-year contract, tore his Achilles. Your best wide receiver you decided to trade away. But then it's like you look at what they were doing before Daniel Jones got hurt, and it was like ginormous trade for Sauce Gardner, giving away all their first round picks. And you know what I mean? So this is what I'm saying when I think the Colts are one of the worst run organizations secretly in the NFL. Like, I feel like they got Peyton Manning and they drafted Andrew Luck. Those two things have made the Colts a relative franchise for the last 20 years, right? 30 years at this point. But outside of those two things, I don't feel like the Colts are a well-run organization. I feel like their direction changes. It's like we're going for it, and then like 6 months later, it's like we're not going for it. So I don't really get the direction the Colts are going this offseason, but we'll
Yeah,
see how it
and
works out, I guess.
I like vividly remember me and you like watching the Colts play, going through the beginning of the NFL season, and we're just both sitting there talking like, when is this team going to fall apart? Like, when are they going to start losing?
Yeah,
And
we of course
surely
didn't want it
enough,
to
it
be
happened.
a Daniel Jones injury,
But
but
even before he got hurt, I think he
yeah, no,
started to struggle a
we
little
were
bit
like,
more.
when is it going to happen, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of started happening even before he got hurt.
Yeah,
If you
it did.
remember, the
Yeah.
Colts were like 6-0 or whatever, and the Steelers went into Indianapolis and beat them. And then I think the next game they were getting beat pretty good, and that's when he tore his Achilles.
Yeah, and that's
So
what
it felt like it
killed
was
Jonathan
starting to go
Taylor.
down.
Jonathan Taylor was amazing to start the season. He was like
Jonathan
by
Taylor
far
was
RB1.
yeah, Jonathan Taylor was amazing all year though. He still had a
I know.
good rest of the season.
He was worse after everything went down,
Well,
but I mean,
he
still
was
great.
worse, but he was worse than he was worse than running back one, right? Like he was still very, very good.
Yeah.
Some stats for the Colts last year: 23rd in plays per game, negative -0.9 pass rate over expectation. Their EPA per play was 7th in the NFL, so they did have valuable plays for these fantasy options. So we definitely got to talk about that. Their run percentage was 17th in the NFL. And they scored 27.4 points per game, which was good for 7th in the NFL. I guess from a fantasy perspective, because we kind of harped on the Colts a little bit. Sorry, Colts fans, but who do we need to talk about and focus on for this Colts team, David? Because Jonathan Taylor is amazing. Put him to the side. Everybody knows you can go get Jonathan Taylor, and he's going to be solid and great for you. But I think we really need to try as well as we can to piece our way through these pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, we already talked about Alec Pierce. Not going to be a great option, like very, very clearly. Fantasy-wise, he has those spark games. He becomes relevant. It feels like he has a good week, and all of a sudden he's a waiver wire type of guy. Um, Josh Downs, like we said, he's a solid receiver. Um, but no, I mean, not. I don't think he's going to be some awesome fantasy value. And
So
obviously,
is it Tyler Warren?
yeah, it's Tyler Warren. Like I was gonna say, it's gonna be a focus on the tight end room. I was gonna let you get into that first, but I mean, it's Tyler Warren, and then but this big of a gap. It's Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor. That's their offense. That's the only two
Tyler
players that I would want anything to
Tyler
do with.
Warren is your tight end 3, 4?
I don't know if I even have it down right now. I have not made technically anything about tight ends, but
Yeah, all
I
of
would
this is all
say,
of this is off the fly. So Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, right? But is he the best one after that? Or are we forgetting people? Kittle.
well, isn't Kittle coming off an Achilles tear?
Yeah, that's why I'm
Yeah, so
wondering if Tyler Warren's
yeah,
number
I
3.
think it is Tyler Warren.
So there you go. Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor, you can target those guys. If if Josh Downs is one of those like 8th, ninth, 10th, 11th round type wide receivers, again, he's the type of guy I'm looking for, right? He's shown flashes. Michael Pittman, the target hog, is gone. And we've already established that Alec Pierce is not a target guy. He's a 4 or 5 targets a game. 3 of those 5 targets are Hail Mary deep balls, right? If he hits it, he's going to have a good fantasy day. If he doesn't, he's not. But I think there might be some value to Josh Downs this year, especially in a PPR type style league.
Definitely he's on the fantasy radar. I don't think he's. I mean, he's worth taking a flyer on late round, but I feel like there's a lot of receivers that are kind of like that in the NFL. And you never
I
know;
think
it
I'm a
could be
little
somebody
higher on
else
him
on
than
the
you are.
Colts.
I think
I
I'm a
don't
little
think he's
higher
going to
than
be.
him.
I think he'll be relevant.
The
I think
targets are
he'll
going
be
to be
rostered in every league and started in deep leagues probably.
the targets are going to be consolidated, right? They went from 4 solid pass catchers to 3. And I think that Tyler Warren's definitely number 1, but I don't think that Alec Pierce is going to be enough volume and targets to jump to number 2. So that's why I feel like Josh Downs could slide into that number 2
I
realm.
think for
And
me,
we've already
where
established from the stats last year that the Colts, while they kind of fell apart due to injuries, their plays for fantasy players were very valuable. Their defense is not that good, and they scored a lot of points.
I think for me the concern is I don't have high expectations for Daniel Jones, and I think if he has a tough year after coming off that, that's really going to hurt Josh Downs' upside. I
That's
think
fair.
still Tyler Warren could have a good year because he's just going to be the target machine. But I don't necessarily love anybody else in that offense. I don't really,
Jonathan Taylor, you left, but
not as much as I did last year. I mean,
well,
he's
yeah,
going to
but
be
I
good,
mean,
but I
so
don't
what?
love him,
He's
especially
a
with.
second round running back instead of a late first round running back.
I mean, he's a second round running back last year. Got him second round in our league.
Yeah,
Actually, I think he
that's
was
fair.
almost third round.
That's fair. He's in the same realm this year.
But yeah, no. What I'm getting at is I don't like to project quarterbacks or the weapons on teams that have quarterbacks coming back from Achilles tears to have great years, and so having somebody that's kind of isn't even proven with the quarterback coming from that situation, I don't love his projection for this season. I think he's a solid player. I think in a perfect situation where Daniel Jones is healthy, I think he could have a great year or a surprisingly good year. Instead, I think he'll probably have more of that average season where he becomes fantasy relevant, has some good weeks, but I don't think he's going to be anything super special. I would look out for him maybe the
So
year after that, though.
So if you're right, then I would have more interest. It's assuming you're right about how Daniel Jones plays, then I would actually have more interest in Alec Pierce, right? Like I would put Alec Pierce on my bench because he's like a break glass in case of emergency. You got 3 bye weeks at wide receiver and you don't have a wide receiver too. Throw him out there, right? There's a chance he scores 28.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's probably not a bad person to stash on your bench there. You got some bye weeks or whatnot. Just throw Alec Pierce in there at the flex, throw him in there at the wide receiver too, whatever you need to do, and just it's a
Yeah.
play and pray type of
Maybe
situation.
the answer is Alec Pierce, even though you can't rely on him because he's going to have the games that you may actually want.
Yeah, I'd say Alec Pierce as emergency fire alarm.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think if we had people place bets on where we have the Colts finishing, they'd be able to get it.
Yeah, third or fourth probably.
Or, should we jump into the good teams? Because there's two of them in this division.
There's only one, and it's the Jaguars.
Regardless of if you think the Jaguars are going to win the division or not, you know that the Texans are a good football team.
Defensively, maybe. I don't know about offense.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, CJ Stroud.
Except for Fairbairn. Shout out my GOAT. That guy was awesome.
What a season for those of us who still use kickers sometimes.
Goodness, every game you just watch Mr. CJ Stroud bring him right into field goal range and then get sacked twice. And out comes Fairbairn to give me his 15th point of the day in fantasy.
I think I'm becoming more and more we don't need kickers in fantasy football. But Kaimi was amazing.
So fun when you have Kaimi Fairbairn. So fun.
As you would expect from a team that finished in a playoff position and then won a playoff game. There was no coaching changes in Houston. D'Amico Ryans and the coordinators are both back. Outgoing fantasy contributors, not a ton. Christian Kirk, I think, is the biggest name to go. Joe Mixon, you can say kind of is outgoing. He didn't play the whole year because of an injury, which really hurt them. I think their run game was atrocious last year. Woody Marks is just not an every down back, and Nick Chubb is washed. Nick Chubb was the other name as far as the outgoing. Pretty sad how bad Nick Chubb looked.
And when your knee goes the wrong direction, it's pretty tough to come back from it.
For what, the second or third time?
That poor guy, man. Watching that happen was just like, oh, man.
Great favorite Brown of all time, which is a low bar, but he's my favorite Brown of all time.
He's a good guy, but he always wore a goofy-looking helmet.
David is very interested in the aesthetics of helmets and jerseys and all that stuff, so those types of things bother him.
Yeah, you know what really bothers me? When they wear those loose cut jerseys like Garrett Wilson, bro. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, David hates when you have the loose sleeves on your jersey as well.
You look like Peyton Manning at wide receiver. Goodness gracious, get it together,
Peyton Manning
guys.
At wide receiver. I actually like what the Texans did in the offseason to fill some holes. So David Montgomery was traded from the Detroit Lions. I don't see how he's not the main back on this team. And then in terms of pass catchers, they did go and draft a tight end in the second round out of Michigan, Marlon Klein, which I think will be interesting to see how and if he contributes too much in his first season. Oftentimes, tight ends are slower to begin their their production and their contribution than wide receivers and running backs. But
what is it? They say third. Is it third or fourth year that they say tight ends typically break out? I mean, historically,
I think generally with wide receivers, they talk year 2 breakouts, and with tight ends, they talk year 3 breakouts.
I think that's what it is. I know receivers was year 2, but I couldn't remember if tight ends was 3 or 4. But yeah, no, I think actually the Texans are fine at receiver. Obviously, they have those wide receivers from Iowa State, Jaden Higgins, and what's the other guy's name?
Jalen Noel.
Both of them were
Noel. Sorry,
both of them were solid.
Yeah,
like they weren't great, but I mean,
David, you're forgetting. They have Nico Collins.
I know they have Nico Collins. I was just trying to talk about. I mean, it's Nico Collins. You don't have to really say a lot about him. He didn't have the best year ever last year, but he's still a pretty solid receiver.
Yeah, CJ Stroud had a bad year last year, and it affected.
No, Nico Collins, I was not forgetting about Nico Collins. Don't you worry. I know Nico. I had him. Yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna.
I know that you. I know. I'm just. I want to make sure that we don't forget stuff. So, you're all good.
But yeah, no. And on top of that, been hearing some sparks about good old Tank Dell coming back from his 8 leg injuries at once. So it'll be interesting.
I think you can call him an incoming fantasy contributor. Like, the expectations don't have to be that high when you're the wide receiver 4.
Yeah, and if he's Sparks back, he could be he could be on the field a lot. He doesn't even have to be the wide receiver 4. He was awesome when he was healthy. It was actually pretty devastating to watch that injury happen. I think Tank Dell. I really like Tank Dell. Like, I don't know. It's just sad always you see a player go down like that. It goes back to what we were just saying about Nick Chubb. Like, you always hate to see somebody go down with an injury like that. So, best wishes to Tank Dell. Hope you can get back on the field this season and kind of prove everybody wrong that you can come back from that, because that'd be pretty awesome to see. And if you can do that, and look out for him on the fantasy radar, because he was right on that fantasy radar before that injury.
Yeah. Before we jump into those pass catchers anymore, I realized I forgot to share the stats. So the Texans were 4th in plays per game, so their pace of play was very high. Their pass rate over expectation was -1%. Their EPA per play was 22nd, so a lot of crappy plays that didn't score a lot of fantasy points. I felt that as a Woody Marks manager.
The
23
red zone
carries.
offense had to have been
Yeah,
terrible.
23 carries for 65 yards. I mean, just, yeah. Their run percentage was 18th in the NFL, 43%, and they scored 23.7 points per game, which was 13th in the NFL. However, as we established at the beginning, this was heavily driven by Kaimi Fairbairn. They did not score enough touchdowns for how often they got down in the opponent's side of the field.
I'm trying to find this stat that I have, because I remember I was statting it out, and they were like the team that was the outlier when you looked at their like touchdowns per game versus points per game. It was like,
Yeah, 100%. It was atrocious red zone
absolutely
offense last year.
ridiculous. You can keep talking. Let me see if I can find that stat, actually.
Yeah, so I think I'm higher on the Texans than David is. It's already been established. Their defense is incredible. I went through, because you always have to do this, and I looked at the outgoing and the incoming players for all of these teams, regardless of if they were offense or defense. Because when you're trying to project out how a team is going to finish in terms of NFL standings, defense is just as important as offense. They didn't lose any huge contributors on defense, hardly at all. They went out and improved the running back position. They are getting Tank Dell back from injury to go along with already 3 pretty solid wide receivers, 2 solid ones and 1 great one. And the defense is still going to be incredible. I don't see how the Texans don't win this division. I just don't see how they don't.
Yeah, and going back to what I was saying, I'll just give you for example. So the Titans were 30th in the NFL in points per game, 31st in touchdowns per game. The Colts were 7th in points per game, 6th in touchdowns per game. The Jaguars were 6th in points per game, 4th in touchdowns per game. And the Texans were 13th in the NFL in points per game and 23rd in the NFL in touchdowns per game. So that shows you just how good Fairbairn was last year.
And that's my other thing with how I don't see how the Texans don't win this division this year. They finished 1 game back of the division last year, and their red zone offense was atrocious. There's no way that doesn't regress to the mean this year, which means they're going to score way more points.
Yeah, I know if CJ Stroud has any better. I mean, and if our run game's better, like we said, David Montgomery will be a big boost.
David Montgomery is going to be a
offense.
huge boost to the red zone run game. They have great wide receiver. I just don't see how the offense doesn't improve. And if it goes from, where it was to like an average red zone offense, their points per game is going to jump from 24 points per game to 28, 29 type point, 30 points per game. And with that defense, if you're scoring
1.5 touchdowns,
if you're scoring really 28 points per game with that Texans defense, you're going to win 13, 14 games.
Their touchdowns per game were like right there with the Titans last year. That just is ridiculous for how successful they were.
There's no way that doesn't repeat. And when you were that bad and you finished 1 game back of whoever won the division and you still won 12 football games, I don't see how the Texans don't win this division.
I mean, that defense is elite, but I just think I might be a little more out on CJ Stroud than you are. Put it that way.
I mean, that's fair, right? Like, I don't think CJ Stroud's an amazing quarterback. I think there was this like, oh, I think he could be amazing at first. I think we know what he is now. But all he has to do is cut down on the turnovers a little bit, and they have to be able to run the ball in the red zone and score touchdowns instead of field goals. And this team is going to improve their offense by 5-6 points per game, and they're going to win 13 or 14 games instead of 12. And I just don't see how a 13-14 win team doesn't win this division.
Yeah. I mean, I think they'll be a solid squad. We'll see how it turns out.
That's the nicest thing David can say because he doesn't agree.
It's because the
So Nico
Jaguars are going to win the
Collins,
division.
right? Like we know Nico Collins is a great fantasy relevant wide receiver. What's your opinion on David Montgomery? That's interesting to me.
I think he's going to be a solid running back this year. I did stat him out as like a top 28, 25-ish running back. And so, I mean, he's very firmly on that fantasy radar. He should be kind of
The
a
only
weekly
thing
starter.
yeah, I agree. The only thing that scares me about him is I still think Woody Marks is going to get the pass work, and I feel like that could limit his upside if he doesn't score touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, but we've seen David Montgomery split a workload his last, what, 4 or 5 years, very, very heavily with, not 4 or 5 years, but last 2, 3 years with Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's still been able to have that production. He scores touchdowns. He's gonna be more involved than he was in the Lions, I think. I think he'll take more of the work than he did from Jahmyr Gibbs.
I agree with you, but the Lions, A, much better offense. B, him and Gibbs didn't split running versus passing downs or something like that, right? Like they were like drives. They would trade off. So I just worry that David Montgomery is just not going to catch enough passes. Like anytime you get into 2nd and 8 or 3rd and 7 or third, you know what I mean? David Montgomery jogs off, Woody Marks jogs on. You know what I mean? And I worry about his pass catching. But if they're better in the red zone, Woody Marks already proved last year he cannot be a red zone running back. Like he cannot get in the end zone. It's terrible to watch. So I think if David Montgomery and the Texans in general regress to the mean and score some touchdowns, David Montgomery is no way he doesn't finish as a wide receiver, running back too.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting. I saw some statistics last year about this. You always get caught up like, okay, so who's the third down running back? Who's the pass catching back? And in reality, the person that's out there on third down, obviously they're the pass catching back, but the other running back that's out there actually, I think I can't remember if this is exactly correct, sees just as many targets on first and second down as the third down running back does, because in reality, a lot of times on the third down, the running back's not the best option to try to get that first down. The check downs actually come a lot more on first and second down. And so David Montgomery could be out
100%.
there in a non-passing situation and still be catching passes. So I don't think it worries me as much as you're noting.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think I also just worry about how many other mouths there are to feed there in terms of the passing work as well. But like I said, I think David Montgomery's like he's a solid volume, gonna get his points I keep saying wide receiver, running back too. Um, so I think we agree on where he finishes. Maybe our mechanism for how he gets there we think might be a little different. I think it's gonna be a little more touchdown dependent, but
Well, I did too. I don't expect him to catch a ton of passes, but to be honest with you, I don't expect Woody Marks to catch a ton of passes either. So that's kind of my point.
fair enough. I actually thought Woody Marks looked good sometimes last year, but they just were asking him to do something that's not his skill set. Should we talk Jags?
Yeah, talk about the division champions.
So the last team to talk about is David's AFC South champion Jacksonville Jaguars, as he told you 1 minute into the podcast. Um, as you would suspect from a team that won 13 ball games and won the division last year, no turnover in coaches and coordinators. Coordinators all entering year 2. They were a completely new staff last year. Outgoing fantasy contributors, the big name we got to talk about and what it means for them is Travis Etienne going over to the Saints as a free agent. Incoming, not a ton to write home about. They also drafted a tight end in the 2nd round out of Texas A&M. I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Nate Borkirker. Kircher. I apologize, Nate, if I'm butchering your name. And they
If
yeah. Who knows? Maybe I said it right one of those 3 different ways I said it. Um, And Chris Rodriguez Jr. was also signed in free agent. So as you can see, we were really grasping at straws for incoming contributors for this team.
Yeah, so right off the bat, I'm gonna disagree with that Chris Rodriguez take. Trying to remember the exact information, but Chris Rodriguez has played for I can't remember if it's their head coach or their offensive coordinator currently, and he loves him, like absolutely loves him. And so I actually think
That's
Chris
fair. He's still
Rodriguez.
significantly worse than Travis Etienne.
Oh no, but I think Chris Rodriguez is going to be on the fantasy radar, and I think he's going to be a great late round pick. Just going to say that right now.
That's fair. I mean, I think they liked what they saw from Teuton, but we'll see.
Just telling you, draft Chris Rodriguez late. There's no reason not to. No risk, all the reward.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you have anything else to add about your favorite team of all time?
Gonna win the division. Looked good last year. Impressed me in the playoffs. I thought they had a really good shot at beating the Bills. I actually thought they had a pretty good shot at going all the way to the Super Bowl. Obviously not much has changed there. They're going to move Travis Hunter to more defensive focus, which I think is going to help the team in the long run. They have lots of wide receiver options with Brian Thomas. They have
Great wide receivers.
Gabe. What is his name? Oh my goodness, why is his name slipping me?
They've got
slot guy.
Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, and the one you already said. Now I'm getting them mixed up in
Brian
my head
Thomas.
too. Brian Thomas, thank you.
But yeah, they have solid receivers, a very solid quarterback, a pretty good defense. They're not really missing anything, and so I think they'll be good.
I think they'll be good too.
Think division unlock. No.
Fair enough. Stats for last year from the Jaguars. Sorry, David, I didn't mean to cut you off there. They were 9th in plays per game, had a pass rate over expectation of 1.6%. Their EPA per play was 7th in the NFL. They ran the ball at the 14th highest clip, and they did score nearly 28 points a game, so 6th in the NFL in points per game. I think that's the Liam Cohen effect there.
Yeah. Good offense, like Georgia said. And I don't see why that would be any worse. I think Travis Etienne obviously better than anybody they have there now, but I think that the running backs they have are still very capable of putting up solid production. So I really don't expect a lot to change as far as offensive efficiency or I really don't think a lot will change at all. I really project them to be very similar to last year. Obviously, we kind of finally saw Trevor Lawrence on the trajectory up. That was good to see him kind of play to where we kind of hoped he would be at as the first overall pick back in the day. So yeah.
If there's a quarterback I trust as little as CJ Stroud, it's Trevor Lawrence. I don't buy in that he's figured everything out at all.
I think he's experienced enough and a solid enough quarterback that I really do trust him to lead the offense.
I don't trust any of the quarterbacks in this division, to be honest.
That's why they need to start Anthony Richardson on the Colts, man. I don't know what else to tell you. They need to at least have one.
That's why I think the Texans are going to win the division, because I don't trust any of the quarterbacks, so I'm going to pick the team with the best defense, and that's the Texans. But I do think that the Jaguars are still going to be a good team. I do think you still want fantasy pieces there. The thing I'm struggling with the Jaguars is which fantasy pieces do I want, right? Like, is which wide receivers going to end up being the one you want? Which running back's going to end up being the one that you want, right? I'm really struggling to pull that out, and that just might be something that we don't learn until we get more into our beat reporters reporting from training camp every day type stuff.
All right, Drew, question for you. You have to answer this immediately. No hesitation. You're on the clock. All 3 receivers are there. Same pick. Who you're taking?
Same round. Like,
you get one of the receivers. You only can have one.
I'm not factoring in their ADP is what you're saying.
Yes.
I think I want Jacoby Myers because he scores touchdowns.
I'm taking Parker Washington.
fair. I
And that
mean,
running back, go.
I want to take Tootin, but I could easily see how it's Chris Rodriguez. I'm much less convinced. Like I said, I'm really struggling with pulling out who I want from this offense. That's what scares me about it. I think there's going to be plenty of fantasy goodness to go around. It's just who's going to get it. Is the part that I think, like I said, I think we're going to have to wait for the training camp reports to start coming out. Like, you start to get that smoke like, well, Chris Rodriguez is taking more reps with the ones than Tootin is. And everybody's like, that's not what I expected. Right. And then you feel that smoke, you see that smoke, you hear those rumors. And that's when you start being like, maybe Chris Rodriguez is the running back. Right. Same thing with the wide receivers. I think we got to hear a little bit about how they look. Parker Washington was great last year. But Jacoby Myers got added late, so there's going to be this whole integrating him fully into the team this offseason as well. So I think it's really hard to kind of figure out where the fantasy goodness is going to come from. Like I said, that's what I struggle with on this team is they have plenty of great players. It's who do I want from that group of great players?
So Drew's advice is draft Jacoby Myers and Bashul Tootin, and I say draft Parker Washington and Chris Rodriguez.
So there you go. There's the team in a nutshell. We're going to have to wait and see a little bit.
I would recommend listening to me, though. Just a tip.
How many fantasy championships have you won?
How many fantasy championships have you won?
It sounds like somebody who the answer is 0.
But despite that, you keep letting me convince you of things every year.
I let you convince me when you're right.
Just basically every time.
You were right about Tet, right? Like, there was no way he wasn't going to be fantasy relevant. But I was right. He's not a superstar. I don't think we really need to tell people our divisional predictions. We didn't do a good job of hiding them this episode.
So obviously, I have the Colts 1. No, I'm just kidding.
David has the Jags finishing in first place, the Texans finishing in second. Are the Texans a wild card team, David?
Yes.
Okay. David has the Titans finishing third. There's your little surprise we talked about. And David has the Colts in fourth. I have the exact same thing, except I flipped the Texans and Jags. So I've got the Texans in first, the Jags in second, the Titans in third, the Colts in fourth. David and I both higher on the Titans than last year, both lower on the Colts than last year. I was waiting for you to ask me if the Jags are a wild card team, like I asked you about the Texans, and I was just thinking about that.
Are the Jags a wild card team?
To be honest, I think the answer might be no. We'll find out, though. They definitely could be. I just think the AFC is so stacked, right? Like out west, you've got the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Chargers, who are all playoff contenders. In the north, you've got the Ravens, the Bengals, and we'll see what the Steelers are always hanging around when you don't expect them to. But even if you just say the Ravens and the Bengals, that's 5.
I have the Jags slotted in as the 2 seed in the AFC. It's just crazy how different we are.
That's 5 playoff contenders, and then you head over to the East, right? And you've got the Patriots and the Bills. I don't think the Patriots are a playoff team, so I think the Jags can be a wild card team, but I think it's going to be like last year in the AFC, where like you got 4 teams or 5 teams fighting for 3 spots, and they're all 10, 11, 12, 13 even win teams. The top of the AFC is just really, really strong.
I have the Texans kind of slotted in that 6 or 7 spot, so I think they're the fringe team. I think the Jaguars are gonna have a really good year.
Yeah, we've just got them flip flopped.
But yeah, I think that there's a really good shot that one of them wins their division, the other one slides into that like last wild card spot.
I agree. I'm pretty convinced that if you're correct and the Jaguars do in fact win the division, I'd be shocked if the Texans aren't a playoff team, because I think it's going to be like last year where they finish a game back, 2 games back only. If the Texans do win the division, I can see more of a route where the Jags miss the playoffs, but I can also see the route where they make the playoffs.
I will tell you right now, This is not a shocker. There will not be three teams in that division in the playoffs. The only two teams that
No,
have a chance are
definitely
the
not.
Jags and the Texans.
The
Titans
AFC
are going to be
East and
better this year, but
the
not good
AFC
enough for the
East and the
playoffs.
AFC South have no shot at 3 teams.
And the two teams that have a chance, we know who they are. The other two teams aren't playoff contenders this season.
In both of those divisions, right? This division and the AFC East. The AFC North and the AFC West are far more interesting in terms of multiple playoff contenders, I think.
And if you want to know which teams you think are going to make the playoffs, go check out our first episode where we talk about why the Jets are going to make the playoffs.
Don't say stuff that's not true, man. Don't give the Jets fans hope.
Hey,
you picked the Jets to finish third, which I can't believe. I don't know if we're ever gonna see a team that wants to lose games as badly as the Jets do this year. But anyways,
I told you my bold prediction. They're going to overperform, miss out on their pick, and their coach is still going to get fired.
So while David says, Jets fans, I got you, he just described your worst nightmare.
That's what's going to happen.
Well, actually, Aaron Glenn getting fired might not be part of the work. If they did well enough that they missed out on the quarterbacks, didn't make the playoffs, and Aaron Glenn retained his job, that might be the worst nightmare. Clip it. Okay, so David and I went over our division predictions. A lot of fantasy goodness in this division. It's a fun division. I think in recent past, it's been kind of a boring division from a fantasy perspective, but it's definitely getting better. Starting to get some good players and some good teams in the AFC South. Next episode, we will be covering the last division in the AFC, so we'll be covering the West. Lots of great teams, great players out in the AFC West. As a reminder, before we move into our last segment, we are on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts with these episodes, the Fantasy Facts Podcast. On X, we are over at The Fantasy Facts. TikTok and Instagram, fantasy.facts. As always, facts is spelled F-A-X. As we always do to end our episodes, we are going to close with a Bible verse that David is going to read and share. And then we will sign off and get ready for the AFC West. Take it away, David.
Yeah, so today I went with Philippians 4, 6, and 7, which is a very, very special verse to me. It's actually my favorite Bible verse and my fiance's favorite Bible verse, and something that I kind of carry with me every day. And so it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Oftentimes it's said in simpler terms. It basically is, don't worry about anything, instead pray about everything. As somebody that sometimes lets my mind get the best of me, get nervous about things, whether that be just as something as simple as a test or worrying about the future, this is a verse that I really carry with me. It gives me peace knowing that God doesn't want us to worry about things. He wants us to instead trust in Him, but not only trust in Him, like give our worries to Him. Obviously, it's okay to have fears, be worried, but instead of milking and just sitting in that fear or anxiousness, we want to give that to Him, pray to Him, because God will protect our heart. He'll give us our peace. And when we present our requests to God, it's what He wants us to do. He doesn't want us to keep it in our minds, even though God knows what we're thinking at all times. He just really wants you to come to Him with your worries and be able to talk to Him. So just remember, anytime you're dealing with something that's really hard, really scary, just anything in life, that God's there, and if you present your requests to Him, He's gonna guard your heart and keep your mind at peace.
Amen, brother. Thanks for sharing. As always, we will see you for the next episode, and we will cover the AFC West. Anything to add, David, before we sign off?
RIP USA men's national team.
Man, what a downer to end the show. Can't believe you brought it back up. Anyways, signing off. Thanks all for listening. Can't wait to see you back here next episode as we talk about the AFC West. Catch you all on the flip side.